What is the most used man-made material on Earth? You guessed right, it's concrete. Look around. It's everywhere. Sidewalks, driveways, foundations, floors you stand on, and even entire buildings are made out of concrete. So why don't we discuss it more? In each episode of Concrete Logic, we will explore one concrete-related topic with the help from industry professionals that are shaping the future of the trade. We'll talk with suppliers, contractors, architects, engineers, specialists, and even some proponents of competing materials about their views of concrete and their vision of its future. Welcome to another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. And today I have Gary Brown with me. Gary Brown's from R.L. McCoy. Gary is business development over there, but he's been in the concrete pumping industry for 47 years. So he's got a lot of knowledge that he's going to share. Not all of it today, though. We're not going to do all of the sharing today. So I hope Gary enjoys this. I know we're going to talk about concrete pumping today, and if he likes to do this, I'm definitely going to invite him back. So we're just going to do an introduction to concrete pumping, and then yeah. So but before we get started with Gary, same thing I tell y'all every episode how this podcast works. So we have no advertisers, and the reason we do that is so we can bring on whoever we want. And we don't have any commercials or anything like that. So the way we do that is I ask you guys to do three things for me, and one of the three things is if you enjoy this podcast, please share it with a colleague or a coworker in the industry. The second thing you can do is if you go to concretelogicpodcast.com, you can hit the contact. There's a contact link on there, and you can shoot me a message and give me an idea on a topic or guest. And then the other way you can get a hold of me is there's a little microphone in the bottom right-hand corner of the same concretelogicpodcast.com homepage. You can actually leave me a voicemail. So if you prefer to leave me a voicemail, I'm a guy that I rather talk than type. I talk easier than I type. So that's why that's there. And then the last way is there's on the same homepage, there's a donate button. You can click on the donate button. And if you feel like we gave you some kind of value today and you want to return that value in a monetary way, you can do that by clicking that, and you can give any amount. It doesn't force you amount. There's no paywalls or anything like that. I don't have premium content or any of that other nonsense that's out there. You just click on there and you send whatever amount you want. Today, we got one donation. It's my wife, Gary. She's always sending. She's sending me money for my podcast. She sent in $12.47. Appreciate that. And yeah, so that's how it works, guys. And she'll be listed as producer for this episode. This should be episode, I believe, 88. So there's after this one's released, there's 88 episodes for you all to check out. So yeah, a lot of content for you. Gary, let's get started here. Gary, like I've mentioned, Gary's been in the concrete pumping industry for a long time, and we have not, out of the 87 episodes, I don't think I know we haven't had a podcast episode dedicated to concrete pumping. So this is going to be a good one. Gary, just to get us started, could you just tell us what concrete pumping is? For not everybody knows what that is.
Pumping is a vehicle of moving the concrete from the ready mix truck through the machine, through either a boom of some sort, pipeline and hose, to a point where the ready mix truck can't just drive up to and either direct shoot into the forms or slab work. So it's a vehicle for moving concrete in places that was never designed to actually be. It eliminates crane and bucket, Georgia buggies for those, wheelbarrows for some people, and it expedites the ability to move concrete at a higher speed and velocity.
Yeah. And when I always get excited when I see them driving down the road, and I point them out if my kids are with me, I point them out. I tell them that's a concrete pump, but not. I don't think people pay attention. Like when a truck drives by, like a concrete pump drives by, that they know what that thing is. To me, it looks like it's an oversized like fire truck with a folded up steel hose on the top of it and a scissored down.
The boom truck is configured to where a lot of people mistake it. Some people mistake it for a well drilling or some sort of crane. The concrete pump over the last 60 plus years has been designed where now it can move upwards of plus 200 plus yards of concrete per hour, which is almost 1,000,000 pounds of material every hour for hours on end. It's one of the most versatile machines. It's changed all the ways of construction over the years, from just house slabs all the way up to high rises. So it's been a very integral tool that has made placing and moving concrete much more efficient, less labor intensive than previous methods.
Yeah, and when the truck. Well, let's talk about the different types of concrete pumps, and then we can talk about how they operate, because that's pretty cool too.
There's multiple different kinds of equipment. We'll start out with grout pumps, which are generally using for slushing block wall. The more masonry contractors, if they have to slush their walls, or if you work in the southern states where they slush grade beams for hurricane protection for houses in like Florida, Louisiana, that area. Then they move up to small trailer pumps, which a lot of light commercial contractors employ in their daily business, where they pull them behind a pickup truck to place slabs or sidewalks out of the reach of a ready mix truck. Then we go to the bigger trailer pumps that are used in high-rise concrete pumping generally, where they have the pressures capacities to pump 100 stories up with no problem. And then there's always the boom trucks, which is probably what you see on most job sites day in and day out. There's approximately 11 to 12,000 boom pumps throughout the United States. It's not a very big number, but they're all working every day. And those concrete pumps generally have the capacity to start at 100 to 140 yards an hour, all the way up to 200 plus yards an hour, depending on the type of pump that's in the actual boom.
Right. And what the boom pump's probably the most prevalent, right?
The most popular, the most request on almost any job site is a boom pump. Most general contractors and don't like to handle pipe and hose unless they absolutely have to, because of the labor intensity, the vigorous activity is most likely chance of possibly hurting somebody because of the weights. So whenever they can use a boom truck, there's boom trucks that start out at 20 meters, which is like 55 feet, going all the way up now to 75 meters here in the U.S., which is about 220 plus feet. So there's a lot of different sizes out there that can be employed. When the boom trucks run out of reach, that's where we go to detachable or placing boom application that goes into a superstructure for high-rise construction. That's where your big trailer pump sits on the ground and pumps through pipeline up through the building. And different size boom trucks or placing booms set on top of a pedestal for concrete vertical work and expedite the pour sequences by being able to place large volumes of concrete in a very short time.
Yeah, I saw someone posted on LinkedIn. I think it was 72 or 75 meter, and that just seems amazing to me. Do you think that we're getting to the limit on the size of pumps? Because I was kind of researching. I was asking the guy that posted the 72. Again, I think it was 72 or 75 meter, but I was asking him the weights of that truck when it's in transportation mode. It's folded up and going, because our roads and bridges are only rated for a certain amount. So I was wondering if you get to a point where you can't you're so big you can't drive it anywhere.
Right now, your 70 plus meter concrete pumps are going to weigh in excess of 140 to 160,000 pounds. In the southern states, you're able to run 20,000 per axle in most states without the daily permit, which means you're going to get somewhere in 140 to 160,000, which is in that 72 to 75 meter range. Here in Indiana, we can only run 125,000, so we can't run a pump that big. So it depends your size and location. I know they do have an 86 meter that Sandy makes that is in the Asian countries. Another thing that they're exploring right now to make bigger booms, they've got some of them with carbon fiber in the booms to lighten the boom weights and help with the tipping loads, which is another issue when you get into those 75 meter boom lengths. The setup, because of the outrigger spread, sometimes limits the ability to set up on certain job sites because you need a 50 by 50 square for those big pumps like that. Not every job site has a half a football field for it to set up in. So we're kind of reaching that limits. There's talk on how to redesign to get the longer limits. I don't know that they'll get there anytime soon, mainly because of road restrictions, like you said, that a lot of states that they only allow certain weights, and Indiana is one of those states that tops out at 125 without what they call super load permits, which when you see these trucks with multi-axles moving equipment that have all the axles underneath, that gets into that super load, and escort and flagging, and that would be almost insurmountable for our industry because our industry doesn't always think far enough ahead to move a piece of equipment like that from job A to job B. So we're almost at our limit for now.
Right. And we kind of hit on some of the benefits. You mentioned some of what's the benefits of concrete pumping. If you were trying, you're in business development, and so you're out there and you're trying to get everybody to use your pumping services, right? So for some, I know a lot of guys just, we like to see the pumps out there and they make the job a little bit easier, but what other benefits are out there?
Besides the speed at which a concrete pump can move concrete, it can also bring it to a point of placement with very little effort. So you can put it directly into the form with different types of hoses and configurations off the end of the boom. It reduces labor. Every contractor is interested in how to reduce labor. So that helps in a safety aspect when you're using a boom truck compared to pipe and hose. You're not picking these heavy pipes and hoses loaded full of concrete, so you reduce the opportunity for injuries. And all of us are concerned about a workman comp incident or a severe injury, trying to pick something up and injure a worker. So the concrete pump has just been an all-around useful tool in expediting the job, and I think that's the biggest selling point because it can move concrete extremely fast from 10 yards an hour to 100 yards an hour at a very easy pace. And if there's a place to put the concrete, it can exceed those amounts of concrete per hour. I mean, it can unload 10 yards, which is 45,000 pounds of concrete in 2 minutes and 35 seconds. So that gives you an idea of how fast you can rotate a concrete truck. The ready mix suppliers like it. If you're a housing contractor, you can do multiple pours throughout the course of the day with a concrete pump, where you may not be able to when you're direct shooting, which used to be the way that they did it, and it automatically alleviates a lot of possible hazards of a truck getting too close to the forms or the dirt walls that go around basements and such. So between safety and production, I think those are the two prime reasons why concrete pump is the tool of choice.
And the diameter of the pipe, what is the most used diameter?
If we're grouting, we're going to be in the 2-inch range with 2-inch hose. If we're doing a pea gravel mix, you might go up to 2.5. You can move some natural gravels through 3-inch. Your limestone mixes, which is probably one of the predominant aggregate across the country. Generally, a 4-inch is the minimum size. All your boom trucks are 5-inch or 148 millimeter metric, which is 4 and 7/8. So those are kind of the standard sizes, depending on your aggregate size and the mix that you're trying to pour, kind of dictates those diameters.
Do you recall when the first pump was used in the United States?
It would have been in the mid to late 60s. And I couldn't tell you which brand first made its, trademark in the 60s. I know there's a few pumpers that were pumping concrete in the late 60s. They were either using a Whiteman, a Challenge Squeezecrete, which was one of the predominants. There was a couple other brands that were coming onto the scene that never really materialized. Schwing came into the United States in the very early 70s, 72, 73. The Cross brothers were pumping the Detroit Renaissance Center, and they had the stage pump because the building was over 700 feet tall. So they had a P80 Whiteman on the ground, and halfway up the building, they had another P80 Whiteman, and they were chain pumping to get it to the top of the building until they took a trip to Germany and met with Frederick Schwing and the Schwing Corporation, and they Schwing convinced them to bring one pump in, take all the other pumps out of play, and they pumped that job all the way to the top. And that was basically when Schwing made its entry into the U.S., which was like 73 or 74. Putzmeister, they came into North America in the early 90s, 91, 92. And of course, they've made an impact. And now we have several Asian pumps over the last 15 years that have joined the market. DY, Alliance, KCP, just to name a few of them. And so now there's quite a different brands to choose from. So concrete pumping has been around for 70 some years, but it really hit home. And if you want to see a big change in the market, was the early 80s. Concrete pumps started coming alive, and manufacturers started putting pumps out there that could reliably pump day in and day out. Or the early versions of the pumps in the 60s and 70s, you didn't know if he was going to make it through the pour or not, because they couldn't take the mechanical abuse of every stroke, a piston push or squeezer every time it would roll over to squeeze concrete out, whether it was going to blow apart or just plug up. But the piston pump, when they came on board in the early 70s, started making a difference. So been around for a while, a lot longer than people realize.
I'm actually shocked. I think it's relatively new for the industry. If you look, I mean, concrete's been around for, one can argue thousands of years, right? And that's pump's already been here for 50 of it. So we're trying to figure out how to bring new technology into the industry. And it sounds like to me we did a fairly good job bringing the concrete pumping into it, and that's really not that long ago.
Piece of equipment. Prior to that, the crane and bucket was the way. The crane and bucket would do high-rise work. I know when I first started selling concrete pumping in the early 80s, I watched the crane and bucket take 16 minutes to make a cycle from the ground to the 30th floor and back, and it only held 2 yards. So then, a concrete pump at 30 floors would pour 100 yards in an hour. So in 16 minutes, it would put 35 yards on the deck. That's when everybody started looking at the concrete pump as the tool of choice to expedite construction. When you put up a building and you're looking for that 4 or 5 day deck cycle, the concrete pump can make that happen without a lot of overtime. A lot of times, depending on the decks, they'll pour the deck in the morning, they'll pour the vertical in the afternoon, and the next morning they're flying tables up on top of the deck they poured the day before. And if you're looking at a crane bucket, even if you had 2 cranes on site, that without working many hours of overtime, that's theoretically impossible, where a concrete pump can do that in a normal 8-hour day. So it has become the tool of choice for placing concrete from, like I said, from footings on house slabs all the way to high-rise construction, heavy base mat, industrial, bridge and highway, another, front that they took on. And back in the 80s, that was all crane and bucket. No one would try to pour a deck on a bridge that only pour one span at a time because of deflection on beams, where the concrete pump could maintain and deflect the beams and go on to the next beam without the concrete to set. So it expedited bridge pours. Instead of making 3 and 4 pours on a 3-span bridge, we're pouring the entire deck in one day. So it's facilitation of moving concrete through the pipeline. There's no better tool than the concrete.
Do you think, since it sounds like concrete pumping really got its stride in the 80s, did it greatly influence concrete mix design? Do you think concrete mix design changed a lot before the pump was used?
Mix designs in the 70s was questionable at a lot of times of pumpability. They started changing the mixes when pumps came into play, when they tried to facilitate mixes that would pump through some of your older versions of pumps. When the piston pump came into play in the early 70s, with the valving that Schwing and Putzmeister came out with, mix design wasn't as important, and some of the mixes that they had doctored up for pumping, they found out they didn't need to, so the mixes started changing in the 80s and into the early 90s, when the late 80s, when the chemicals came in, the plasticizers, the super plasticizers. That's when I saw the biggest mix designs start to change, because they found out that they didn't need as much cement or the paste to coat all the aggregates to pump at low slump and without putting water to it. And then your plasticizers or super plasticizers came in, and they found out that the adding of those two agents, that with the pre-existing designs, the strengths went through the roof because of less water that was normally added to concrete for finishability, not necessarily pumpability for the finishers. Instead of adding water to get that 5 or 6 inch slump, they did it with chemical, and their mixes would go up 10, 15, sometimes 25% in strength. So that's when the ready mix producers started realizing they could cut back on paste or cement and still place the concrete. And as that time went on, they started making it difficult to pump mixes, because they were taking out the two additives that make concrete pump, and that's cement and water. It takes a certain amount of paste to coat all the aggregates and the fines, and it takes a certain amount of water to mix it all up to make it work. And if you take too much of those two quantities out, then the mixes are no longer pumpability. Their pumpability drops way off, or sometimes won't pump at all.
If you could have it your way, and there was one mix that you would tell folks to pump every time to make your job easier, what would it be?
There's a wide range of mixes that are very pump friendly. So there's 3 things that go into what I call a quality mix, and one is the gradation quality of the aggregate, to where the top size ag all the way to the bottom size ag has a very gentle curve in it. And that they can check on sieve analysis. Right now we're having issues with some of our mixes not having the middle fines, which is your 3/8 to 1/2, because the asphalt industry is kicking in, and that's the kind of aggregate they put into asphalt. So sometimes the mix that goes in for a concrete pump may be shorted some of that aggregate, and that causes pumping issues. Or they take too much cement out of it, because now we're fighting, global warming, carbon footprint. Where, ready mix producers, including our state, are trying to figure out how to reduce the amount of cement put in the mix that will still meet their criteria, along with the ability to pump and finish and make a quality product. So we're seeing some fluctuations in that. So if I had my pick, because that was the question, I would have at least a 6-bag mix of, even if it's a limestone mix, not to exceed 1,800 pounds of stone, about 1,300 pounds of cement, 276 or 265 to 270 gallons of water, basically with no admixtures, because that pumps really well. But if they went with an admixture, maintain the admixture added after they create the mix design with those quantities without taking the water out. A lot of times the producer wants to take water out and add mixtures, but if they don't take the water out, you talk about a mix that'll fly through a concrete. That would be it.
I know. So you're big. You were, when I was reaching out to you. You were, where were you? You were out at ACPA
Yeah, I was
event.
out in California at the spring board meeting for our general board meeting where we go over all the things that we're working on and such. So, uh, yeah, that's where I was at.
Yeah, and that was, so ACPA is American Concrete Pumping Association, right?
Correct.
And you are you on the safety committee, or?
Yeah, I'm a board member. I've been on the board for now almost 24 years, and of those 24 years, I served on the certification committee, which is the committee that designs safety training for operators to go through to make sure that we're teaching them and training them on all the safe techniques of how to run the pump and safely set up the pump and make sure that they work with the placing crew on keeping the placing crew safe on different things that we talk about in great detail. So right now I'm back as the certification chair. I got repositioned back on that back in the spring, so I'll do that for the next couple of years before hopefully in the future I can kind of step back a little bit and just be what I call the second chair on the ACPA.
And you were talking about something regarding safety, and a new. Can you talk about the? You were saying OSHA does even look at this.
Right.
Can you
Yeah.
explain that?
Sure. Uh, It'll be almost 2 years ago, the American Concrete Pumping Association, with a team from our association members, along with a publishing agency, we developed what we call the program to institute and train contractors and suppliers on the ASME B30. And it's we are safer together program to tell all the three parties and teach them their responsibilities to make sure that they do the right things, when a concrete pump is ordered. Uh, Just some statistics that is kind of shocking. There's approximately 10,000 pumps that I talked about earlier on job sites every day. And of that, there's 30,000 mixers showing up to concrete pumps every day. And there's 10,000 people working around the back of the pump. And there's 300,000 workers within 100 feet of a boom pump every day, which all that equates to 2,400,000 workers are within 100 feet of a concrete pump every day. And that's where the liability comes in for all of us to make sure that we do our job. And the concrete contractor has responsibilities that they need to provide. The ready mix producer has things that they need to provide. And of course, the pumper as well has certain things that they should provide every day before we go to the job site to make that job site safer. So we are safer together is a new program was introduced in 2022 with the World Concrete. And then in 2022, ConAg, it was introduced again. And then we reintroduced it in 2023. And so it's fairly relatively new promotion that we're trying to make everybody aware of. That website, wearesafertogether.org. You can log into that, and it goes over all the things that every party is responsible for and gives them some of the danger areas to look out for as well.
So do you have? I haven't been on the website, but you have like a checklist, like you can check behind the operator when he gets set up, make sure he's set up safely, and have certain.
All the details are talked about as to areas of responsibility. What we, as an association, and you, the contractor, we ask you to search out a pump company that has their operators that are safety certified, so you'll know that those operators have been safely trained. They should have some form of a certification card, and the contractor should be looking for hazards of power lines that they may have to deal with before we get there. And we have a checklist of things that the contractor should provide the pumper when he arrives on the job, which is basically a spotter if we can get within 20 feet of the power lines, because electrocution is the number one killer of our industry. So that's one of the first rules that the contractor needs to get together on with the pump company, along with any kind of other obstructions they need to work around. And then, of course, give them the pump company a list of any kind of hoses and accessories that might be required to do the job prior to getting there. And that way the pump company, like we talked about earlier about hose sizes, can ask the question, is the ready mix producer going to supply a mix design that will accommodate a 2-inch hose or a 4-inch hose before the job started? Because if it plugs up, then that creates a safety hazard for the working crew to work with, the pump operator, and it just creates another hazard that it could easily be solved by making sure that the producer has the right mix for the right hose, but the contractor's got to tell everybody what they're trying to do and accomplish.
Yeah. Which is good for, I'm sure you don't have people lining up at the door to be a concrete pump operator, do you?
No, there's a lot of people who think that it's an easy job because all they see generally is the pump operator with this little box hanging around his neck and looks like a video game. And in some regards, it does, act like a video game, but the responsibilities of running the machine to make sure that the ground conditions will hold the weights, because we were talking earlier about a 75-meter concrete pump. It's got a ground weight of in excess of 100,000 psi. So you've got to have the proper cribbing to keep that machine upright, and that's dealing with your contractor to make sure they either have road plates or some kind of crane mats, because you can't haul the kind of cribbing on a concrete pump of that size. If it was equivalent to a crane, you'd see a whole semi-load of cribbing following the crane to the job, and it's basically the same thing. So those things need to be coordinated with the pumper, and the contractor needs to understand that it's their responsibility to have ground conditions that will support those loads. And if not, some kind of consideration needs to be talked about before the pump ever shows up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's 2 years ago, I did middle school career day. So my oldest was over there, and I had a pump truck come with a ready mix truck, and had the ready mix truck fill up with water, and we pumped water through the pump truck, and even let some of the kids run the boom pump. Man, they loved that thing. They thought they were at career day in if you can imagine middle school kids, they're annoyed that they got to walk around and talk to adults about their careers. So everybody was inside the school walking around talking to these people with their inside jobs. And then I had the pump and the concrete truck sitting right outside the front door. So they came out and they're like, it's just loud and what is this? And then as soon as they saw that box, I even got my oldest boy, he got to run it. And they played with it's like you said, it looks like a video game thing. Right. Oh man, they thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I might have got maybe 2 or 3 pump operators out of that day. I don't know.
Well, we hope so. It is a taxing field due to the fact of the unusual hours. We pour sometimes through the night when we've got any kind of bridge work or any kind of infrastructure work that impedes local traffic. They make us work at night so it doesn't make for congestion for the public fairways. So our hours are never consistent. We never work the same shift 2 days in a row as far as start and finish time, because you never know when you're going to finish, because sometimes the contractor will throw on a second or third pour because they got something ready and the pump's already there. So they just hang on to the pump for hours, and usually long days, sometimes short nights. Pump operators, it's a taxing field to stay active with, and some people over a period of time it doesn't fit their lifestyle.
Right. Yeah. You got to know that ahead of time. It's not a 9 to 5 for sure. I know you're in Indiana and I'm in Virginia, but could you give us an idea what a pump operator starts at as far as salary wise, and then how far can they
Sure.
go up? Have you seen?
Our current labor rate for a journeyman operator, which is an operator that has met all the criteria of hours and completions of training, is roughly $41.75 per hour. They have a complete paid health insurance package, which R.L. McCoy contributes $10.75 an hour to that, which is if they work the 14 or 1,500 hours at a minimum, their family's completely covered with insurance. And it's not too bad of an insurance policy. And of course, we contribute to a pension of $10, and I think it's 95 cents an hour. So you equate that over a 2,000 hour year that we contribute $25,000 to $28,000 a year on just a 2,000 hour week. And the majority of my operators don't work 2,000 hours. They generally work 2,000 plus. Unless they take a lot of vacations or personal time off. That's the only way they're going to work less than 2,000 hours, which is a 50-hour week, and the other 2 weeks is consumed in holidays or legal time off. So it's not uncommon for our operators to make between 120 on the high side, and the guys that don't work the hours and take vacations, they're still in the high 80s, low 90s. So it's a very lucrative career. I tell operators if they stay in long enough, their union pension, because we are a union company, will be equal to their 40-hour check when they retire. So if they base their lifestyle around a 40-hour work week, they won't miss when they retire as far as their ability to take care of their family.
Yeah, that's amazing. Was there anything else you wanted to hit on before we end today?
Other than we do have two other accidents that I want to warn contractors when they order concrete pumping that are becoming extremely, I'll call it popular for no better word. One of them is called hose whipping, which is when we start the day priming through the hose and the ability for that hose and the prime to get partially obstructed. And then when it comes out, it'll whip the hose. We're seeing more and more injuries because of the capacities of the pumps and how fast they go for hose whipping. And then the other accident that we see in the industry that seems to be creeping up, and that's tipping, where the operator doesn't have enough cribbing, or the contractor may fail to have told them that they're sitting on top of recent excavation of some kind, or they installed some plumbing lines the day before, and then we do a punch through the pipe or whatever it is below the ground, and the boom comes down, and sometimes, unfortunately, it causes death. Sometimes it's injury of some kind. Sometimes it just damages the boom pump itself, but that's where we are safer together with the contractor doing their fair share and making sure that we know what we're setting up on. It just makes for a safer job site.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll put that website on the link when I send out the podcast. But Gary, I appreciate you coming out on the show, and we'll have to bring you back on. We'll have to talk about there's so much to talk about when it comes to pumping. I feel like we just kind of skimmed the top of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that when I give presentations to other people, how a concrete pump actually works and how it's progressed over the last 40 years. They're amazed. One of the things most people don't understand is the concrete is pushed into the material cylinders, the creating of a vacuum of a negative atmosphere pressurization outside the hopper. It pushes into the cylinder. So that's where the fluidity of a concrete mix is crucial, because it, like most people thinks the cylinder draws the concrete into it. Well, it technically does somewhat, but without the atmospheric pressure, it won't push in. And when you get a mix that is not very pump friendly, you're not filling cylinders. And now we got pipeline, the boom, that we have part concrete and part air. So then it creates hose whipping possibilities because of that. So there's a lot that goes into the mix design and the pumping action for the safety of it. this doesn't have to be in the podcast, but in 1988, the ACPA changed their mission from promoting concrete pumping to concrete pumping safety because of all the accidents they were having with concrete pumps, because of the powers that was being created in the pumping capacities. And I always tell people when I give a safety seminar, 3 of the most serious accidents I had were prior to 1988. I took a 7,000 volt power line contact. I took and blew 3 of my fingers off blowing compressed air, using compressed air, and I worked too many hours on an old concrete pump, and this was all before 1988. And now we practice, teach, and train, and we just got to get people to listen, not to do the things that I did, because they might not have been as lucky as I was. So.
Yeah. No, that's, yeah. Whew. You've seen it. For sure.
Seen a lot, yeah.
All right.
I've had a few guys after I trained come up to me and they said, man, you've had a lot of accidents. And I said, well, I hope you remember all of them and you don't do the things that I did, because mine was lack of training, with the exception of working too many hours. That was on me. But the other 2 were just the training techniques, and the things we do today were not available. So some of those things we now teach and train how to hopefully avoid those kind of incidents again.
Yeah, no, that's great. Like I said, I'll put that website on there, and we'll make sure we get the word out on that. And Gary, I appreciate you coming on the show today. And folks, until next time, let's keep it concrete. And that concludes another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. I hope you got some value out of that episode and learned a thing or two. If you did, visit our website, concretelogicpodcast.com. Click on the show support tab and learn how you could be listed as a producer of an episode. Again, that's concretelogicpodcast.com. Click on show support tab to learn how you can support the show. And as always, Mike Dunton will take us out.
That alarm always sings couple hours before the sun comes up. Open up the side, put some diesel in the lights, and wait till the trucks roll up. Yeah, this ain't how most folks live their lives, dripping in sweat, working overtime. But while they're tying their ties for their 9 to 5s, we're out here changing these skylines with wood, iron, and mud. We work hard for a dollar, give thanks to the Lord above. Never make a man do something you can't prove. Hard work calls for a drink or 2. Expect more, it's written in our blood. With wood, iron, and mud. From the swamps to the city, from the Lone Star heat to the woods of the Georgia pine. Good old boys and girls who ain't afraid of getting dirty for a clean time. And if you want to see the fire in a grown man's eyes beneath the hot summer sun, find the wild-eyed boys clocking days and nights, working hard to